Hello you lovely muffins, I'm Matty Matt and this is Pixel Cuddle, where I take a good, wholesome, positive look at all the brilliant things to have happened in video games this week, while remaining squarely within YouTube's guidelines for advertiser-friendly content, so your mummy and daddy can go out for tapas without worrying you might see anything implying the world isn't a utopia of gumdrops and unicorns, and there'll definitely be no bad words. Yay!
Shit, tit cunts, that was fucking horrifying. Inappropriate language. Bollocks. Yeah, like I do this for the sodding money. Yeah, that extra 8p a month really makes a cocking difference, doesn't it?
Power up completely. I help you.
Advertiser-friendly content, my fucking arse. We begin this week with the news that there's a new model PS4 out in the wild right now as we live and breathe. Not the PS4 Neo, aka the PS4K, but rather a new slim variant of the bog standard ordinary regular PS4, first released in 2013, what you might already own. The new model has mechanical power and disc eject buttons instead of finicky digital ones, a matte black finish instead of a glossy one, is a third of the size smaller than the original model, and officially does not exist. Yep, despite overwhelming evidence, Sony has refused to confirm or deny a new PS4, slim or otherwise, to a level that could almost be considered admirable, if it wasn't so ridiculous. The first of these new model PS4s was initially spotted out in the wild on Gumtree, a UK classified ad site where people give away or sell things like sofas, lawnmowers and consoles whose existence isn't denied by their manufacturers. Actual pictures of the new model PS4, courtesy of the seller themselves, quickly wound up on NeoGAF, where almost everyone immediately dismissed them as fake for various arbitrary reasons. Which, as visceral knee-jerk reactions go, is entirely understandable given how many NeoGAF forum members fell arse over tit for this Nintendo NX controller hoax back in March. Richard Ledbetter of Eurogamer sister site Digital Foundry, and also former deputy vice editor of Mean Machines back in the early 90s, yes Richard, some of us are old enough to remember, visited the seller personally to see the console for himself, snap this spiffy little picture of it and confirm it was indeed real and not merely a whopping hoax involving a 3D printer and too much free time. Eurogamer reached out to Sony for comment and none was forthcoming. Although it's worth pointing out Eurogamer also briefly had a video of the console that does not exist until they took it down, upon taking legal advice. Which doesn't necessarily mean Sony got back to them demanding they remove the video or anything, even though that's blatantly what happened. Now some people might reasonably question the wisdom of putting legal pressure on a website to take down a video but letting them keep the pictures up, but as the Nintendo NX controller hoax I mentioned a little bit earlier proves, pictures are much more easily refuted in this age of 3D printing and Photoshop, as are the various examples of people selling the new slim model PS4 on eBay and other such sites. On the other hand, denying a video of, say, someone removing a PS4 Slim from its packaging, plugging it in on a desk covered in empty ketchup bottles and showing it actually functioning is a tad more difficult. Cue Laura Kate Dale, formerly of Destructoid and co-founder of UK game site LPVG, which stands for Let's Play Video Games by the way, and not Landespersonalvertretungsgesetz, who acquired one of these phantom PS4s and did a review of it, as well as a video showing the unboxing, plugging in, switching on and getting up and running of. According to Laura, this new model, referred to on the box as simply PS4 and not PS4 Slim, no longer has an optical audio port. I've always wondered what that weird little socket was. It's something I could say, but then I'd be lying. There's also the new matte black finish and mechanical power and disc eject buttons instead of fiddly digital ones I mentioned earlier, and the hard drive is reportedly easier to access, remove and replace if need be. It's also smaller, thinner, quieter and cooler, in a thermal definition of the word. Aside from all that, however, it's functionally identical to and runs no better than the original model. Sony haven't done what Microsoft did with the Xbox One Slim and beefed up the internals to add 4K, Ultra HD, 4K Blu-ray and HDR support. It does however come with a new redesigned DualShock 4 controller that now shows the colour of the light bar at the top of the touchpad. Also, when plugged directly into a PS4 Slim or regular model PS4, it transfers data entirely over the wired connection, reducing input lag. That won't mean too much to most people, but it is kind of a big deal for fans of games like Street Fighter V. For reasons too dull to go into here. In short, all rather solid evidence that a new version of the PS4 will be announced at Sony's upcoming press conference on September 7th, alongside the PS4 Neo. Unless of course Laura 3D printed a fake case using an STL file that doesn't exist, hid a real PS4 under her desk with cables going through the fake plastic shell, and used Heinz ketchup bottles, if that's what they really are, to hide said cables. Then, for a touch of authenticity, hooked up a 9V battery to a white LED under the fake power button and printed a completely fake instruction manual. I am joking, of course, although believe it or not, some people still actually believe this whole early reveal thing is a big fat fake. Not too many fortunately, and at least they have the excuse of being certified morons who grew up eating chips of lead paint scraped from the walls of an abandoned nursery deep inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Worse are the self-appointed Sony Defence Force whining about spoiling the surprise, or Sony spent a lot of money ready to market this and you've ruined their plans. Oh no, won't somebody please think of a giant multinational conglomerate's poor hurt fifis? But it isn't properly newsworthy. But an official announcement of the exact same thing at a big fancy Sony press conference somehow would be? How exactly? Does a bigger budget and a larger venue make the information magically more relevant somehow? Would this PS4 Slim video be magically more real if it were filmed at Buckingham Palace by Her Majesty the fucking Queen? Of course it fucking wouldn't. Sure, okay, this information may not be in quite the same league as, say, exposing illegal government surveillance or the startling revelation that a secret cabal of immortal cyborg Hitler clones are poised to conquer the world, but if a handful of screenshots emailed out as part of a press bundle to various sites can still be considered relevant news, then so can the existence of a new version of an existing console, however that information is conveyed and whether or not it's been officially confirmed. For the record, if there was really a secret cyborg Hitler clone cabal, I'd really prefer to know about that as soon as possible, even if that meant spoiling their big global announcement.
Achtung Welt, wir sind der Cyborg-Hitler-Klon-Kabaler und wir sind unter euch. Keinen Furcht unter Menschentums, damit sie alle bald von unseren mächtigen Riesenroboterspinner an ihn vernichtet werden.
Speaking of global conspiracies, the first new piece of story-focused DLC for Deus Ex Mankind Divided was announced this week. Called System Rift, I guess because System Shock is already taken, it sees protagonist Adam Jensen infiltrating one of the Palisade Bank Corporation's data blades, which are those big blue buildings you see in the distance that may look like giant futuristic desk lamps, but are actually huge high-security server farms. So you know. You're welcome. As well as promising more Deus Ex the way fans like it, with actual stories and character interaction and not in the form of a tacked on free-to-play game mode, System Rift also sees the return of lovable dickhead Frank Pritchard from Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Radicals have broken into our manufacturing plant and taken hostages. Maybe this time you'll actually save people.
Pritchard's original voice actor is also returning, so we won't have another jarring David Sarif situation where the replacement voice actor sounds barely anything like the original one. Not much else has been revealed about the DLC except that it's still set in Prague, so no globe hopping, and that, in agreeing to help, Adam may also be able to uncover hints as to who the Illuminati are. You know, Adam, you could just read the Deus Ex wiki. Just saying. Alas, there is currently no confirmation of roughly how long this new DLC will be. One hopes it will be closer in length to the rather spiffy Missing Link DLC for Deus Ex Human Revolution, which was satisfyingly big and meaty, and not the Desperate Measures pre-order bonus mission for Mankind Divided, which was nice, don't get me wrong, it was nice, but really nothing more than just a brief side mission. Given the price Square Enix will be charging for System Rift, a hefty $11.99 or the equivalent in your regional currency, it had better be something significant. We'll only know for sure, however, when it's released on September 23rd. This September 23rd. Blimey, that's a bit soon, isn't it? You'd almost think an entire section of the game had been cut out and held back for precisely this occasion. Yeah, random Kotaku commenter, I know DLC sells better when it's sold closer to a game's release and some DLC is developed alongside the main game. Stop angling for a community manager job. Besides, in this instance, we have some interesting information from an anonymous inside source at Eidos Montreal, via notorious Boglin fancier Jim Sterling here, claiming Deus Ex Mankind Divided was a survivor of aimless corporate diddling by Square Enix higher-ups. According to Jim's source, Eidos Montreal had no idea microtransactions were even planned for the game, until Square Enix's London office contacted them one day out of the blue and told them to put them in. Now this call didn't come a month or a year or even 2 years into development. Oh no. Eidos Montreal were apparently told to put microtransactions into Mankind Divided a mere 2 weeks before submitting the game for final certification. Yep, 2 weeks before the game was in a state ready to ship, a period which Eidos Montreal had intended to use for last minute bug fixing and other tweaks, only to spend it shoehorning in a whole new system that had no bearing whatsoever on the game they'd designed. Needless to say, their likely reaction to this abrupt demand was probably something along the lines of,
I never asked for this.
that never gets old. Another sign of Square Enix interference was the game's breach mode, which I honestly haven't even touched, extrapolated from one of the most uneventful segments of the game. The specific sequence in the main story is unremarkable, yet works well enough and doesn't outstay its welcome, but even a child could tell it wouldn't survive being stretched out into a separate game mode with added microtransactions. Square Enix, however, insisted it be included as an entirely separate game mode, with microtransactions of course, because, according to Jim's source, get this, they thought the main campaign would get too stale for players. For the record, I'm not in any way knocking Eidos Montreal here. I think they did a great job making Mankind Divided a worthy follow-up to Human Revolution, in a way that also brings some noticeable improvements to the table, particularly in the level design department. Locations feel more like real lived-in spaces this time, with alternative paths better integrated into the environments rather than just being a vent. There are still vents of course, but now they're not the only mandated stealthy way in and out of a particular locale. The game has its faults of course. Confining the vast majority of the action to Prague feels somewhat incongruous with the globe-trotting spirit of previous installments, including the one fans don't like to talk about. The ending is also rather abrupt and doesn't really advance the overarching story in a significant way. It feels a bit like if Deus Ex Human Revolution ended immediately after the first boss fight with Barrett, then threw in a teaser for the Montreal mission halfway through the credits. Overall though, I still found it an immensely enjoyable follow-up to Human Revolution. I just wish I didn't have to wait longer for the rest of it. We may not have to though, because according to Jim Sterling's nameless source, work on a sequel to Mankind Divided was started in the middle of 2015, thus lending a pinch of credence to other earlier rumours and scuttlebutt from various anonymous sources that Mankind Divided itself was intended to be a larger game, before Square Enix told Eidos Montreal to cut it in two for a quick and easy-ish trilogy. And you can probably guess how I feel about that, can't you? Yeah, you know what's coming.
What a shame.
That's all for this episode of Pixel Burn. If you liked it, then please do let me know by clicking the requisite button down below and hitting the subscribe button as well if you haven't already, and letting your friends, family, your dog and the Cyborg Hitler clone Cabal know as well. At the very least, I hope you found it tolerable. In the meantime, till next week, as always, du kannst jetzt gehen.